Greetings in the name of the Lord. The subject of this week is monasticism, and I want to share with all of you my personal thoughts about the subject. Uh, Monasticism is defined as a institutionalized religious practice whose members attempt to live by a rule that requires works that go beyond those of either laity or the ordinary spiritual leaders. And the word monasticism comes from the Greek word monachos or monachos, what means is living alone. But the monastic life is not just a Christian thing. Before Christianity began, we have pretty much on the Jesus period on earth, the Essenians. That's a perfect example of what is to be living in a monastic existence. The Essenians left the big cities and they went to the desert. They went to the mountains of Qumran and they lived there in community. We have the example also of John the Baptist, who pretty much he was living in the desert, and from time to time he would go to communities to preach nearly pretty much the Jordan River area. So he would preach and baptize people. So people living that type of existence was not uncommon during the period of Jesus. But furthermore, there were other civilizations that also practiced it and continue until this day practicing monastic life. For instance, the Chinese and throughout Asia, we have Buddhist monks who have been practicing this for thousands of years. At the same time, we have even in Egypt communities that practice this lifestyle even before the time of beginning of Christianity. When we talk about Christian monasticism, we can actually, perhaps it started before, but what we have in record at this point, it started pretty much by the 3rd century. And by the 4th century, this idea of living in solitude became more established. You will see more communities of individuals. They will organize separating genders, and they will live away from society. On the Christian side, some of these monks were inspired by the story of Jesus in the desert for 40 days. But most of these individuals became monks or nuns because they wanted to live only for God, away from the temptation that the world offers. They battle against the desires of the flesh and the rapid changes within the Christian movement. The first known monk of the desert that we know is Saint Anthony of the desert. He left the community life in Egypt and went to the desert mountains of the Sinai to live as a solitary monk. Also, we have Paul the Hermit, who lived as a monk, but several of his followers also live in caves near his cave. And we have also Pachomius. And Pachomius was the very first monk that we know that organized a community of monks. And then eventually we saw names as Basil of Caesarea or Basil the Great, who became well known because of the creation of the monastic communities in Asia Minor and Greece. Particularly the one that Basil established in Cappadocia was in operation. This particular monastic community was actually alive all the way until the beginning of the 20th century. And we see the creation of monastic community not just in Asia Minor, what it is known today as Turkey, but also in Greece. So Not just Basil was able to do this, particularly with men, but also his sister, Macrina. She did the same. She established also a convent. Eventually, we have someone who came along and made a major contribution to the monastic lifestyle, which was Benedict of Nursia. He was monk from the Western Church, from the Catholic Church, the Roman Church, and he made a major contribution, making changes with his monastic rules and the establishment of orders. And today, the Benedictine rules still part of the monastic operation in most monasteries around the world. The monastic communities have made a major contribution as they translated the scripture into other languages and preserved many important documents. For instance, we have in Egypt the St. Catherine Monastery, and St. Catherine is located in the desert. It is at the Sinai Peninsula. It is located pretty much right next to a big mountain that many people believe is Mount Sinai, although there is a lot of speculation about that because there is another Mount of Sinai in Saudi Arabia. But this particular monastery is very important, has been there for many years, was established, actually founded by the mother of Constantine, Helena. And she was the person who created this idea of having a place of worship there right at the side of the mountain. And this monastery today is the second most important library after the Library of the Vatican. We also have the development of the monastic life went from being just completely alone and separated from society to orders of monks and nuns that they decide to go actually and serve into the communities. Perhaps Francis of Assisi is the best known, along with Dominic, who were individuals who created these mendicant orders in order to help people at very difficult moments during the Middle Ages. And today, they still doing that service. Although, today we have a small scale monastic communities in the Middle East, in Greece, in Israel, and even in the United States. For instance, my mentor is a good friend of a well-known singer. His name is John Michael Talbot, and John Michael Talbot is a monk. He was a well-known singer in the 1950s and 60s, particularly during the hippie era, and I guess he became so wealthy that he decided to dedicate his life. So he and his wife, so not all monasteries are people that live in celibacy. So we have some of them that married couple lives, and particularly this one monastery founded by John Michael Talbot is in Arkansas, and at this point is a well-known monastery, approved actually by the Roman Catholic Church. Also in France, there is the Taizé community, and the Taizé community, particularly if you are involved into worship music, you should take a look at the Taizé music. Particularly, I use Taizé music in my time of prayer because it is a powerful spiritual music developed by the people of this monastic community in France. So, my thoughts about Christian life in the monastic experience, well, perhaps I will say that this is more for people that want to live away and have that time of solitude in a permanent basis with God. Perhaps this is a issue of preference. Nonetheless, I believe that the church is called not just to be separated from the world, but we are also called to minister the word. I believe that in many ways we have taken things from this monastic life and we have included them in the church life. For instance, I remember the story of this individual who was at the church Sunday morning sitting, and the pastor was making the announcements, and one of the announcements was that the next month they will be having the Friend Sunday, and the idea was to invite a friend to the church on that particular Sunday. And the following weeks, the announcements continue developing as they were insisting that every member should bring one friend to the church on Sunday. But my friend had a problem, and his issue was that all his friends were already at the church. He didn't know, he had no friendship outside of the local church circle. He has been cut off from his family, from perhaps former non-Christian friends, and his relationship with even his co-workers was limited to just the workplace, and they were not friendship at all. In many ways, we Christians have created this environment in which we try to live separate, away from the world, and in reality, what we are having is a total disconnect when God wants us to be His hands and His feet ministering other people. So perhaps I believe in the balance. Jesus was 40 days in the desert, but after the 40 days, He went out and lived in community with other people. And I believe that we, the church, are called to do that. Nonetheless, I don't want to criticize the individuals, women and men, who have decided to go and to live in solitude in small communities for the rest of their lives. I pray for them, and it is my desire that the Lord use them, and at one point they walk outside of the four walls that they live and reach out their surrounding communities in order for them to be impacted by the love of Jesus and the power of the gospel. Thank you very much, and God bless you.